Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Insurance Town. I'm the Mayor Heath Sheeran and the host of this podcast, and I'm pumped you're here because I got my friend Jerry hanging out with me, and we're going to be getting some really cool stuff here. I can't wait. Guys, I could not do this show without my sponsors in Canopy Connect, your one-click solution to getting the deck pages you need to quote your prospects, and now they want to help you meet your customers right where they are and let them work with you on their terms. You know, when Canopy first built the whole link flow thing, they started with one method and they realized that they needed more. So they created so many other ways. And it's best for you to check those out for yourself at usecanopy.com/Heath. They've got intake platform. They've got the one-click solution. And if you're not working with Canopy already, you've got to check it out and know what you're doing. Usecanopy.com/Heath. If you are a Canopy customer, go ahead and check out your link flow settings to enable the sharing path. Also, my friends over at OneFort for insurance agencies. It is AI to help you save time, win more commercial P&C by automating submissions, quoting, binding, and they work through your emails, so it's totally unique. You don't have a platform to download or an app to get into. You can offload manual work and focus on growing your book. They've already saved agencies over 100,000 hours, millions of hours, you name it. I can't keep up. It's unbelievable. And then my last and final sponsor I've got to not least, is Viva. Viva Virtual Assistants. They are insurance trained, licensed, managed capacity services. They can reclaim 20 plus hours in your day by offloading those quoting, policy servicing, and carrier management tasks. They're bilingual. They can help you handle coverages in all kinds of languages. Every process is recorded and documented so it fits within your playbook. And that way you get the best out of your buck. So check out vivavs.com and tell them the mayor sent you. Man, Jerry, that was a lot to get into, but I'm so excited because I love my sponsors. But I got to bring you in here, Jerry. What's going on, Jerry? How are you, buddy?
Absolutely. I'm excited to be here. Appreciate you having me on, Heath.
Yeah, that's great, man. So let's take a walk down memory lane. Let's do an official walk here. Jump on the sidewalk with me, and let's take a stroll and figure out, kind of where you've been and what led you up to where you are now.
Yeah, 100%. So it's been it's definitely been an interesting couple, probably like last decade or so, even for me. So born and raised in New York, Queens. Kind of lived there for first like 18 years of my life. Went to high school in New York. Went to University of Pennsylvania for my undergrad. I studied kind of like AI machine learning there. And I actually dropped out of college after my freshman year. And so that was definitely an interesting experience. But, I think it's nice because in the insurance space, it's actually so many entrepreneurs and kind of like entrepreneurially minded people. I think it, in a way, it really resonates with a lot of their stories. And so did that, started my first company probably like 4 years ago at this point. We were using AI to answer the phone for plumbers, electricians, all sorts of guys like that. Scaled that business out, and kind of like have basically kind of ran it as a lifestyle business, scaled it out. Left the company around 6 months ago. Started a new company, which I'm kind of working in the insurance space now.
All right. Yeah. So dropped out of college, man. Tell me, you said it's interesting there. So what were you studying in college? What made you decide you were going to drop out? What did mama think about that? Come on, Mr. You couldn't have been happy about that.
No, yeah, my parents were no, they weren't super happy about it. But honestly, I think I'm very lucky that a lot of my parents were actually, my dad actually started a manufacturing company a long, long, long time ago. And so, I think they were a little bit more kind of like entrepreneurially inclined as well. Yeah, in terms of what I was studying computer science, machine learning. I would say the biggest reason I decided to drop out is actually, so much of the information that was kind of like hidden behind these like this college, I don't know, like these like prestigious doors or whatever. It's all on the internet now. you know. Um, and that's kind of a lot of the mentality I've applied to a lot of things. It's just like, hey, almost every bit of information out there to do anything you want to do can be found on the internet. And of course, it's not super easy to learn. You want people to help. You want to get help with learning how to do things. I spent a little bit of time at Bloomberg, kind of like in big tech, and that was really, really helpful for me to kind of learn more of the best practices side of like how to actually do things. But a lot of the kind of like nitty gritty, scrappy stuff, you can kind of just learn yourself.
Okay, so you're one of those. I got you. I'm about to drop a whole lot of money on my kid going to college, and but I get it. He told me the same thing a couple of times. Like, I don't even know if I want to go to college. I can learn it all on AI, or I could just go into whatever it might be. But
Right.
I do think there's a lot to be said for that college experience. But I do think in the insurance space, there's a lot of people that my dad doesn't have. I'm the first. And probably the only, I guess, at this point until my son graduates, Sharon, that has a college degree. So I understand where you're coming from there. And so coming from, a space outside of insurance, I guess I'd love to hear, I know it's been a short, 6 months, but in insurance terms, kind of like insurance dog years, I guess that's more like 5 years, really. But what is something that I guess you hear about insurance that, like a stereotype that you could actually prove that might be true about insurance that you were surprised about?
What is a stereotype that I've heard that, you know, um, there's like a couple of things that immediately come to mind.
Yeah.
Here's kind of like one example of from kind of like getting to know so many people in the space, all sorts of things like
Yeah.
that. I think a classic stereotype is like, people in the insurance space, they're always selling, right? Um, and I think on some level, I've kind of like learned for that to be true. But I've also kind of noticed it's like, at the end of the day, what is sales, right? I believe that sales is really a service. It's a service to connect people to, the proper products, the proper things that can actually support and help them. And that's kind of what I've really seen from insurance agents is they really understand that idea that at the end of the day, they're salespeople and their job is to figure out what it takes to help their clients. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're definitely a service industry, and I've been in love with this industry for 20 plus years. And because of that, I mean, I think
Right.
we're not just salespeople. A lot of people put us in that bucket. And I love to hear that answer from you, because I ask that question a lot of people that are new in our industry. And I want people, I want to hear people think, like, well, what do you think about it? Because a lot of people come into it thinking it's the sleazy car salesman, or it's like the used car salesman mentality. But really, we care about, as an industry, we care about the end user. We care about the client. We care about servicing them and making sure that their needs are met. And sometimes, it's not even related to coverages. Sometimes it's, servicing in a different way. Sometimes it's it's really interesting the way we do things in the insurance industry. And I remember back in my agency days as a producer, I would do lots of things that didn't have anything to do with insurance, just because I wanted to build that relationship and that rapport.
Right. No, I 100% agree. It's almost at the end of the day, like, what is good sales? Good sales is really understanding and building relationships with the people you're trying to support, right? And I think that's something I can definitely see in the space.
Yeah. So why insurance? You came from another space. You came from that call place. You came from plumbers and helping, that kind of area. Why did you choose insurance? I'm interested to hear that before we dig into too much more there. Like, what made you choose that?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing kind of from like an entrepreneur perspective is I love working in spaces that are very deeply connected. I think one thing that immediately stood out to me about insurance is how kind of like everyone knows everyone, you mentioned when you reached out to me, you've heard of me from different places. I've heard of you on all sorts of, it's like, it's a very small world. It's a huge world, but it's also a very small world. And kind of like, from my perspective, that's something I really enjoy working with. Kind of, I love working with kind of like I love working with people. I love getting referred business from doing well with clients. That's kind of like a business market dynamic that I really enjoy. The other thing was my business partner, who I didn't bring on, but he's a former agency owner. Started Clearview Insurance out in New York, scaled it to a bit over
Yeah.
80 million premiums. He was their CFO, and so we're kind of working together on this.
Yeah, man, I think that's I love that reasoning, because I've been in love with this industry for so long. A lot of it's because of the people, and I've
Right.
gotten to know some of these people. And I self-elected myself as mayor of Insurance Town 6 years ago, because I felt like this industry not needed a mayor, but I wanted to be that connector and that person, because so many people in this industry have given to me, and I want to make sure that I gave back and left this industry better than I found it. And so I appreciate that perspective, and that you recognize already in a quick way, in 6 months or so, how tight knit this place is. And before you know it, you'll be right there in the mix of all the same conversations. And I tell people that the insurance industry is kind of like the mob. Once you get in, you can't get out. And people don't want to, typically. You know what I mean? They just like, they fall into, they'll say, oh, I fell into insurance, but they love it, man. It's incredible.
My business partner says that all the time, actually.
We've gotten to know each other a little bit, and I wanted to know, now that you've gotten into a little bit, what, I guess, using your knowledge on AI, and the things you've learned about AI, and now you've gotten in the insurance industry a little bit, maybe put your prediction goggles on a little bit and see, maybe, what do you think the modern insurance agency looks like over the next 5 or 10 years? Could you, kind of take a look at that? Because there's some that say, oh, AI is going to take over and it's going to, replace our people and replace everything, and we're just going to be not even needed at all. And some people say we're going to find, it's going to be just like when .com boom came, it came and went. Like, we're still using websites and whatnot. We've kind of corrected back to the middle. There's a lot of different theories on what the modern future agency looks like. What are your thoughts on that? I'll shut up and let you talk a minute.
No, yeah, I think that's a great question. And, something I heard recently, I've been hearing a lot recently, actually, is kind of this idea that agents are not going to be replaced by AI, right? There's all sorts of things that agents do, from kind of building personal relationships, sharing kind of the emotional side of stories, things like that, giving guidance on kind of how to actually manage risk. All those things, they're not things that AI is ever going to do. AI is not built to do those things, right? But I've also heard kind of this idea that AI might not replace you, but agencies that adopt AI faster than you, and really kind of like, if they're able to do 10 times the amount of work in 10 times as less time, that is the one thing that is at risk of replacing you. I've heard that a decent amount recently, actually at a conference like a month ago, at PIA's Virginia conference. And so that's kind of my high level perspective. My kind of take on AI is, you really want to take advantage of it to better lean into the human aspects. And so let me give a couple of examples, right? One thing we do is we do call coaching. And so we listen into producers' calls, and this is especially helpful if you're kind of like training up a producer, something like that. We listen to their calls and kind of just give them feedback on what they did well and how they could have improved, right? And something we always try to introduce into this is, on the calls that we listen to, it's like, what are some personal stories that you can use, that producers can use to kind of lean into the client they're talking with, right? To relate to them, to help them understand, all sorts of things like that. That's something that AI will not be able to do. But it is something that AI can help give you guidance on doing, by finding good examples, highlighting them, things like that.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up, because I think that's a good point. Because, yeah, I do agree with you that the relationship is such a key point within our industry, and in, I guess, the sale of insurance, and building that rapport and that relationship. And so, for the agency owners listening right now, or for the people that are listening that have VoIPs or have things like that, I've told people a lot, listen to those calls, listen to some of those calls, and maybe train your people
Right.
to listen to the stories, ask questions, get into some of those things. And like you said, AI can't replace that, but it could also enhance that by, plugging that into your CRM notes or your AMS notes and be able to say that. And
Absolutely.
then you could plug that into an AI tool or whatnot to be able to say, hey, help me here, or things of that nature. And I'm sure we can dig into some of that too. But, what are your thoughts on that as people, the evolution of AI with the tools like VoIP?
Right. The way to think about this is really, phone calls is a way that information moves into your agency, right? And so this is a pretty like high level way of thinking about it, but um, phone calls are one way that clients kind of interact with your agency. They might, intake onto there, would, get a quote, ask about making a payment, ask for assistance with filing a claim, right? And so there's all sorts of these different kind of like intakes of information. And I think in terms of how AI will actually integrate with these sources of information, really the sky is the limit, right? I think this is kind of tied back to your previous question, is like in 5 years, it's hard to say kind of where things are headed. I think in 30 years, I think, what the goal of really what I'm trying to do is, producers, agencies are not spending any time on manual work like duplicate entry or, like inputting information into things. All that stuff is handled by technology, right? And that way, agencies can focus on the work that actually matters, building the relationships, advising clients, sharing stories of how to relate to clients better, all sorts of things like that. At the end of the day, it's kind of like we were talking about at the very beginning of the call. We want agents to be able to prioritize on the service part of it, not the, like entering in the same information like 100 times into all these different carrier portals. And so with the phone system, it's, that's an intake of information. And so what could AI do with it? Really, it could, when a customer calls in about filing a claim, they can create an activity on your AMS. That's something that your team can look at. Same for quoting, all sorts of things like that. Yeah, sorry, that was a long-winded thing, but let me know if any questions there.
No, I love that. I think the reason why I was asking that is leading you to. I saw on your LinkedIn as I went to connect with you there, you had something on there that I thought was interesting, especially actually perfect for going in the insurance industry. As you said, I think it was on your LinkedIn bio, maybe you said something like, I build AI for industries that still work on phone calls, PDFs, spreadsheets, and gut instinct, if I'm not mistaken, which is exactly insurance industry. Like there's so many agencies that, we're seeing an influx of tech stack conversations and things like that. But at the end of the day, the majority of the insurance agencies out there are still running on phone calls, PDF, spreadsheets, things that nature.
Yeah. I think that's an amazing question, right? And I think the reality of it is there's all sorts of these different AI tools and non-AI tools as well, right? Like just traditional software tools. And the reality is they're confusing to use, like, I'm an experienced software engineer. I understand how a lot of technology works, but man, like using agency management systems, it is tough. Like setting up integrations, that's hard, right? I don't know if anyone thinks it's easy. And so kind of the way I see it is in a lot of different industries, especially where it's a little bit more old school and kind of people aren't as used to adopting to this type of technology, it's just hard to learn how to adopt it, and not only adopt it, but convince your whole team to adopt it, right? Because these are not like one, at the end of the day, and there are kind of one-man agencies, of course, but, kind of like large, mid-sized, more large agencies, you want your whole team to be adopting the same tools. And that is really, really hard to do. And so that's kind of also related to a lot of how we help our clients, where, it's not that we provide only the software. We'll also actually fly out in person, help train them on kind of how to actually use the technology, and also strategize with them on, hey, let's deploy this technology this way or that way, and all sorts of things like that.
And I think, you know, we've, and I just said it, so I have to, correct myself too, but insurance has been called slow and outdated and an old school industry, but it's also one of my favorite things about it is we are the most like resilient industry in the world. I think we've seen that time and time again in the sense of, we've only had a handful of hard markets that have even threatened our industry throughout even my career, going back, 80s, 90s. I think literally 4, I think. And so do you think that we have been unfairly critical of the way that insurance operates, as far as some of that kind of stuff goes?
I think it's a couple of things, and I think you bring up a great point, right? All of the agencies we work with, they're so incredibly adaptable. I think that is something, one reason why I love working with agencies as clients is, I think they've been through all sorts of different market cycles, things like that, and they know how to adapt and they learn how to learn new things quickly. I think on some level it's kind of just from like a technology perspective, there weren't that many kind of like there weren't that many technology tools kind of coming into this space and building things suited for the space, and also kind of building it with the approach of, hey, we're going to build a tool suited for this space and also make it so that it's easier to use. I think there's things like Zapier, right, which are kind of like across the, they can work in any industry and things like that.
Right.
And those things are just extremely confusing. That's kind of at the end of the day, it's very hard to learn how to set those things up.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think you and I agreed on, in a couple of conversations we've had is about, with technology advancements and AI and all the cool things that are coming out over the last 5 or 6 years, and even more recently, I still think that an insurance agency or tech vendor, or whoever might be listening, carrier, you still have to have those baseline workflows before you can even, integrate anything into there, whether it's AI or any new technology. And I think that's where a lot of people bang their head, even outside of our industry.
Right. I think that makes a ton of sense. Sometimes I kind of hear of agencies who just tell me like, hey, we want AI. And I always tell them, instead of wanting AI or a certain type of technology or something like that, think about what are the actual bottlenecks that's slowing your team down, right? And then how do you use technology to help with those bottlenecks?
Yeah. So some of those bottlenecks you've seen so far in working with insurance industries is what? I love to ask that question too, because I hear a vast variety of different answers there.
Yep. So on the commercial side, I think it's a lot of agencies I've talked to are kind of struggling with things that they've outsourced and maybe the quality isn't the best, all sorts of things like that. And so things like policy checks, COI generation, especially for, when it's like renewal season, for example, it's a lot of work to regenerate hundreds of COIs, building out proposals, especially kind of with your own custom template. That's something else that we've heard is and seen is kind of a ton of work. On the personal line side, by far the biggest issue we've heard is just renewals. And so kind of the amount of renewals coming in that personal lines agencies have to deal with. And then also on that front, it's, when premiums are increasing, clients are unhappy. And so from that perspective, how do you reach out to them? How do you know which ones to prioritize reaching out to? All sorts of things like that.
Yeah. I've spent, my entire career with agency owners in the industry, and I love it. The people that I talk to on a daily basis mean the world to me. And, one of the things I've realized over the last 2 or 3 years, since I've dig into AI as well, most agency owners I talk to, they don't wake up wanting AI. They wake up wanting to solve a challenge, to your point, those bottlenecks. They wake up wanting fewer headaches to help their team to be able to knock out work, to get rid of the mundane stuff, and stuff like that. And I even had an agency owner, I don't necessarily care about AI. I just want my team to stop drowning. I literally had that earlier today.
Right.
So, talk to me a little bit about, your thoughts on that. What would you tell those people that are in that boat right now? Of like, I know it's to your point earlier, AI is not going to replace them, but those that have adopted AI might, get a little bit further ahead of them. What would you tell those types of people that are like, I don't necessarily care about AI. I just want my team to stop drowning.
Right. I think that's really 100% the right approach. Right. I talk to agency owners all the time where kind of their entire staff, if you go to like the activities list on Epic, for example, it's like dozens of pages long, like something almost absurd. And I think that it's kind of becoming where it's like there's just so much work in the industry to do. A lot of it is kind of like repetitive, manual, tedious work as well, and agents know that as well, and it's work that they don't want to be doing compared to going out and meeting new clients, going out and helping clients, all sorts of things like that. And so I think the biggest thing for those agencies who are really kind of swamped, for lack of a better word, the biggest thing is to kind of really, like, you could look at your task, the task list, and think, what are the things that are actually taking a lot of time, right? And what is the manual work that is repetitive that, for example, you could teach an assistant to do for you? Because those are really the best tasks for AI, right? I think the tasks not for AI are things like actually having conversations with clients, helping clients out, all sorts of things like that. Yeah.
So as you and I have had some conversations I want to make sure I get into before we run out of time, and I think it works well here, is talking about this idea that you and I've talked about, is buy versus build. As you identify these bottlenecks, you talk about the challenges. I think that's where you have to start before you start implementing certain tech or AI. Is start with the bottleneck, start with the challenge, start with the workflows. But talk to me a little about you and I were talking about this earlier. I don't really have a question here other than just, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think that's really a great question. And this is something that I recommend to all agencies who talk to me, is just try going on chatgpt.com and automating some of the work that you do. With that said, I will make a disclaimer. You should make a business account for security reasons. When you make a business account, basically you sign a clause. They can't train on your data, right? And so, do not do it on the personal account. So this is something I always tell every agency I talk to is, hey, try doing it yourself and seeing what that will look like. Because one, that will also give you better ideas for what you can do with your agency, what work you can automate. And then, I think from working with a vendor like us, the real thing is
I think they're coming to get you, Jerry.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know what's going on outside.
I think they're coming to get you. Anyway, keep going.
So I think when choosing to work with a vendor, it's kind of, one is how they're able to actually help you adopt AI, and so the kind of like deployment part of it, and then two, it's the integrations that they build.
Awesome. And so tell me a little bit about what integrated AI looks like. If people like at a lower level, like take that down a little bit lower to a bottom shelf, people can understand, there's a difference in just having AI. I just want AI versus integrating that AI.
Right. And this is so kind of tied into this buy versus build idea as well, and I think a ton of different companies are kind of throwing the word like, oh, we're integrated with your AMS, things like that. And, really, when you integrate with something, it's not binary. Like, it's not like, do you integrate or do you not? It's a spectrum of like, how deeply can you actually integrate with these systems, right? And so I think the biggest thing on kind of, and related to buy versus build as well, is at the end of the day, every vendor is actually using the same kind of public models out there. They're using, OpenAI's model, Anthropic's model, Google's model, one of those. Everyone is kind of using some version or an open source model that you can kind of spin up yourself. And so kind of the real value of working with different vendors is the integration layer, right? And so kind of to get back into the policy check example, I think when you actually deeply integrate into a system, it can help not only on time, right? Finding the policy, finding the quote, but also on kind of like depth of work done, right? And so really kind of the value of AI there is being able to more deeply integrate with more sources and then utilize all of those different sources to minimize risk. And that's just kind of one example of how integration can make these products better, right?
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on that, and I'm glad you were able to bring that back to Relay a little bit, because I wanted to kind of figure out um, just at high level as we're coming up on God, it's gone by so fast. Um, what problem or what challenge would you say gave you the idea for Relay, or did you and your co-founder come up with this idea of Relay, and where the name Relay came from, where the idea, just kind of high level, give me a little bit of that origin story type stuff.
Yeah. So I can give kind of the from a naming perspective, the high level just kind of came from the idea of relaying information. And so kind of sending information from one place to the next and utilizing that to produce a better, more comprehensive output, a faster output, all sorts of things like that. I think in terms of the idea is at the end of the day, the agencies that we work with gave us the idea, right? A lot of it kind of started with me me and my business partner flying out to different agencies, asking them, hey, what are the things that what are the problems that you're facing that need to be solved today? And so kind of, we took from that and just kind of started building out products for that could actually help them with these problems.
At its core, what is your challenge that you're solving? What do you want people to stop doing? Because maybe if they implement Relay, this would help them to do what? Like, I would love to hear some of that vision that you have as you're building out your company. I know you said you're still in that early stages, but what is that at its core, Relay?
Yeah. So like I said, we have all sorts of kind of different product lines. The biggest thing is we want to be using AI to help replace the operational bottlenecks that agencies are facing. And so what are, all the time, all the, mountain lists of tasks that agents end up facing every day, we want to reduce that so they can focus on what's most important, which is sales, the relationship, the servicing, all sorts of things like that.
So what does that look like though? For is it a platform approach? Is it an app? Is it you've built agents that they put into their chat? Like, what does it look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's both, right? But we also deploy AI agents where every day we will listen in on all the activities on your AMS, and if there's a policy check activity created, we'll automatically work on that activity and attach a completed policy check onto it.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate that. I look forward to. Was there anything else before I get in? Is there anything else about Relay that you would we did not get into? I know we've talked about quite a bit, but I want to make sure that we get into. If there's anything we didn't get to talk about that you guys do.
I think nothing else on my end. No. I'm excited to meet each other in person.
Yeah, I was about to say I'm excited, and I want to make a plug for the Missouri Agents Association, because I'm really excited. This is my second time to come to an event of theirs. The first time for the MAC Summit. I was at the Small and Rural Agency Conference earlier, and I loved it. And so I'm excited about getting to go back. And so I know this is you and I both our first time at the MAC Summit. So anything in particular that if anybody's listening to this, that's going to be there in a couple of weeks for that event, on the 30th, 31st, is there anything that you want them to know, or maybe where you're going to be? Do you know your booth number? Do you know, you have a booth, what shirt are you going to be wearing? Are you going to be carrying a rose? Like, how can they find you?
Yeah, so we're going to be at booth 22. I have no idea where that is located in the venue, but so stop by. We're going to be giving golf tees, notebooks, water bottles, all sorts of different swag. I'll definitely get you like a shirt or something nice.
Yeah, dude.
And then I'm excited to meet everyone.
Yeah, I think it should be a really good time. They're going to have a lot of cool stuff going on. They got some really good speakers coming out. So just a little plug for my buddies over there. at Missouri Agents Conference. I should be able to get this released before that. But if you're listening to this after that, make sure you reach out. And what would be the best way for them to find you? Is it LinkedIn? Is it email? Is it all the above?
Any of the above. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. You can check out our website as well at relay, relay.co. So feel free to do that. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Jerry, YE is my last name.
Awesome. Man, I really appreciate it. And I'm glad we were able to get this recorded. And I look forward to meeting you in person. And thank you again, man, for taking the time to visit with me.
Absolutely. I had a great time here.
Yeah, brother.